Imagine a war where not a single shot is fired. No tanks cross the border, no jets scream overhead. Yet, within seconds, the hospitals go dark. The life support systems fail. Deep beneath the ocean, a pipeline ruptures, bleeding energy into the sea. Miles away, a single cut to a fiber optic cable disconnects an entire continent from the world. We used to think of infrastructure as the boring backdrop of modern life: roads, bridges, pipes. But today, these are the primary targets. A dam is no longer just a power source, it is a weapon of mass destruction waiting to be unleashed. Disrupt the supply chain and you don't need to besiege a city, you simply starve it. The general of this new war isn't wearing a uniform, and the battlefield is everywhere. But it's not just about destruction, it is about seduction, building ports and railways to buy loyalty and sovereignty. The map of the world is being redrawn, not by borders, but by the physical veins that keep our civilization alive. In the 21st century, the most dangerous weapon isn't a nuclear bomb, it is the grid itself. Welcome to the era of infrastructure warfare. To understand how we arrived here, we must look at how we built the world. For millennia, infrastructure was simply the path to conquest. Railways fueled the Industrial Revolution, moving armies and coal with equal efficiency. In the 20th century, we bombed bridges and factories to stop the enemy's machine. It was crude, kinetic, and visible. The Cold War froze the lines. We built walls and silos, thinking protection meant isolation. But when the walls fell, we didn't just open borders, we dissolved them. Globalization promised peace through trade. We wired the planet into a single breathing organism. Today, 99% of international data travels not by satellite, but through thin glass tubes on the ocean floor. Trillions of dollars in transactions, state secrets, your personal data. Energy became a global marketplace. Pipelines stretched from Siberia to Stuttgart, creating a dependency disguised as partnership. We built a just-in-time economy, efficient, fast, and incredibly fragile. But this efficiency created a new geography of danger. We call them choke points, the Strait of Malacca, where 1/4 of the world's traded goods must pass, the Suez Canal, a 12% slice of global trade resting on a ribbon of water, the Strait of Hormuz, the jugular vein of the global oil supply. We learned that a single accident could freeze the world economy. Now imagine if it wasn't an accident. Military strategists realized that to cripple a nation, you no longer need to invade it. You just need to turn a valve, cut a cable, or change a line of code. The sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines was the wake-up call. The era of distinct peace and war is over. We are now in the grey zone. In this zone, a power outage is not just an inconvenience, it is a strategic strike. The targets are dual use. A bank is a civilian asset, but its collapse is a national security disaster. We built these systems for efficiency, ignoring their weaponization. Water, electricity, finance, transport. They are all linked. A strike on one sector causes a cascading failure across the entire society. The victims of this war are not soldiers on a front line. They are commuters, patients, and families. The physical veins of our civilization have become the very noose that can strangle us. Nations are now racing to secure their own grids while mapping the vulnerabilities of their rivals. Infrastructure projects are the new military bases. A port is no longer just a port. We have moved from a war of territory to a war of connectivity. To survive, we must redesign the very blueprint of the modern world. But first, we must look at the battlefield. To understand the threat, We must understand the architecture. We did not build the modern world for war, we built it for profit. For 70 years, the global doctrine was integration. We believed that if nations traded together, they would not shoot at each other. We optimized for efficiency, just-in-time supply chains, zero redundancy, maximum speed. We funneled the world's economy through narrow corridors. We created choke points without realizing we were building nooses. Take the internet. We call it the cloud, a term that suggests something ethereal floating above us. But the cloud is not in the sky. It is in the mud. Fiber optic cables no thicker than a garden hose carrying 99% of global data. These cables surface at specific, lonely beaches, highly concentrated, highly vulnerable. We centralized the brain of the global economy into a handful of data centers owned by a handful of corporations. Energy followed the same blueprint. We built pipelines thousands of miles long to connect consumers directly to producers. We thought these pipes were lifelines. We forgot that a line that feeds you is also a line that can strangle you. In Europe, the assumption was that cheap gas was the foundation of industry. Security was an afterthought. In Asia, we routed the world's energy supply through the Strait of Malacca, one narrow strip of water. If this strait closes, the economies of East Asia go dark in weeks. Not years, weeks. Our electrical grids were designed for stability, not defense. They are open systems built to balance loads, not repel attacks. The software running our dams and power plants is often decades old, legacy code protecting modern lives. Even the green transition introduces new fragility. Offshore wind farms require cables that are easily severed. This infrastructure exists because it made us rich. It lowered the cost of everything. We accepted total interdependence. We assumed that the logic of the market would overrule the logic of war. But efficiency creates fragility. A system with no slack breaks the moment it is stressed. And now, looking at this map, adversaries see something different. They do not see trade routes, they see targets. Targets that are undefended because they are civilian. The line between civilian and military infrastructure has vanished. The train that carries grain also carries tanks. The 5G tower that streams your movies also directs precision munitions. This infrastructure exists because we invited foreign state-owned enterprises to build it for us. We outsourced our nervous system to the lowest bidder. Developing nations needed connectivity. They accepted loans and labor to build ports they could not afford. And when the bill came due, the port didn't just facilitate trade, it hosted a navy. We separated economics from security. We treated them as different worlds. This separation was a hallucination. The wires are the same. The vulnerability is shared. Even in space, the GPS satellites that guide your car are the same ones guiding ballistic missiles. We built a world where everything is connected, which means everything is accessible. The infrastructure exists to sustain life on a massive scale. Without it, mega cities collapse in days. This is the paradox. The stronger the connection, the more devastating the disconnection. We forged these chains to bind the world together in peace. Instead, we simply gave our enemies a way to reach into our homes without ever firing a shot. To understand the magnitude of this threat, we must look at the blueprint. It is the largest infrastructure undertaking in human history. It is not a single road, nor a single belt. It is a $1 trillion web of concrete and steel, spanning 152 countries, 3,000 individual projects. The strategy is twofold. First, the maritime routes. a string of pearls stretched across the throat of global commerce. Take Gwadar in Pakistan, a deep water port financed and built by foreign state-owned enterprises. On paper, it is a commercial hub, gateway for trade, but the blueprints reveal a dual purpose: deep enough for submarines, large enough for aircraft carriers, move west to Djibouti. Here, the commercial port flanks a military fortress guarding the entrance to the Red Sea. Whoever controls these nodes does not need a blockade. They simply turn off the tap of global logistics. Then there is the overland route, the Iron Silk Road, a network of railways and pipelines designed to bypass the open ocean where Western navies reign supreme. Energy security is the primary objective. Pipelines that pump lifeblood directly into the industrial heartland, immune to maritime sanctions. But the construction comes at a price that is not measured in currency alone. Consider the ghost projects: airports with no flights, highways to nowhere. These are not gifts, they are loans. High-interest commercial loans backed by the collateral of the infrastructure itself. When Sri Lanka could not pay the bill for Hambantota, the debt was forgiven. In exchange for a 99-year lease, sovereignty was the currency of repayment. In Montenegro, a billion-dollar highway threatened to bankrupt the entire nation. This creates a relationship of absolute dependence. The builder owns the road you drive on, but the most dangerous route is invisible: the digital Silk Road, undersea cables that carry 95% of the world's data traffic. Who lays the cable owns the data, or at the very least, holds the mirror to read it. Smart cities built on foreign tech stacks are not just efficient, they are panopticons. Every camera, every sensor, every router is a potential listening post. Even the Arctic is not exempt. The Polar Silk Road aims to exploit melting ice caps for new trade routes, cutting travel time between Asia and Europe by weeks and bypassing traditional choke points entirely. To build this, they need resources. The roadmap leads directly to the mines of Africa and South America. Cobalt, lithium, rare earth elements. The building blocks of the future economy are being locked down at the source. This is not random investment, it is a grand strategy of encirclement. The distinction between commercial and military assets has been erased. Infrastructure is permanent. Governments change, elections happen, but the concrete remains. Once the standards are set, once the tracks are laid, the host nation is locked into an ecosystem they cannot escape. It is a weapon of gravity, pulling the world's economy toward a single center of gravity. For decades, the West slept. We believed the free market would dictate the flow of trade. We thought infrastructure was boring, a matter for municipal councils and private equity. While we debated budgets, they poured concrete. The center of the world is shifting, not by war, but by the steady accumulation of logistical power. Every port is a lock, and they hold the keys. If a conflict erupts, these commercial arteries become military veins. They can deny access, delay shipments, or simply turn off the power grid remotely. This is not a hypothetical future. The cables are laid, the ports are dredged, the debt is signed from the South Pacific to the heart of Europe. The project is operational. It is the weaponization of the very things we need to survive: water, energy, data. We are living inside the machine they built, and now they are ready to turn it on. We know the weapon, we know the battlefield, but to understand the outcome, we must identify the players moving the pieces. This is not a war of generals and soldiers. It is a war of engineers, bankers, and CEOs. For decades, the United States held the keys. They built the internet, patrolled the oceans, and guaranteed the flow of global energy. But the architect is tired, the bridges are rusting, and the grid is aging. While the West focused on financial markets, a new challenger began pouring concrete and laying steel: China. The Belt and Road Initiative is not just a trade route, it is the largest infrastructure project in human history. From the cobalt mines of the Congo to the ports of Pakistan, they are building the arteries of the future global economy. And they own the valves. It looks like development, but critics call it debt trap diplomacy. When the debt cannot be paid, the asset changes hands. A commercial port becomes a naval base. This is the strategy of the choke point, controlling the narrow gates through which the world's wealth must pass. But physical terrain is only half the board. The other half is invisible. Russia plays a different game. They do not need to build the world to break it. Through energy dominance, they hold Europe's warmth hostage, and through cyber warfare, they probe the critical systems of their adversaries daily. They have demonstrated the capability to turn off the lights in Kyiv. The question is, can they do it in New York? Then there is the Trojan horse, the hardware itself. If the routers, the switches, and the towers are built by a rival power, privacy is an illusion. But the most unpredictable players are not nations at all. Big tech, companies with GDPs larger than most countries, they own the clouds where our data lives. They own the satellites that guide our missiles. In modern conflict, a CEO can decide whether a nation has internet access or not. 95% of international data flows through cables owned not by states, but by private consortiums. The line between corporate interest and national security has vanished, and caught in the middle of this three-way struggle between empires and corporations are the rest of us. Emerging nations are forced to choose sides. American software or Chinese hardware? We are witnessing the splintering of the world, the splinternet. Neutrality is becoming impossible. To plug into one system is to disconnect from the other. The global village we were promised is being fenced off into digital gated communities. Even the transition to green energy is a battleground for critical minerals and supply chains. Whoever controls the battery supply chain controls the 21st century. The players are moving their assets. The defensive lines are being drawn in silicon and steel. The era of open globalization is over. The new map is not defined by borders, but by connection. And connection is the ultimate vulnerability. The board is set. The players are ready. Now, we look at the end game. The first risk is the most insidious because it arrives disguised as a gift. Developing nations accept loans for mega projects they cannot afford to repay. When the debt matures and the treasury is empty, the collateral is seized. This is debt trap diplomacy. Suddenly, a commercial port becomes a foreign naval base. A civilian airport becomes a strategic outpost. Sovereignty is traded for concrete, but physical territory is only half the battlefield. The digital infrastructure we install is often built by our rivals. We embed foreign technology into the nervous system of our defense networks. We fear a back door, but the reality is a front door left wide open. Data flows back to servers in hostile capitals. Every movement, every transaction, every conversation. Then there is the threat of direct sabotage. The undersea cables that carry 99% of global internet traffic are undefended. We saw it with the Nord Stream pipelines. Energy infrastructure is soft, stationary, and impossible to fully protect. It does not require a missile. A cheap drone, a well-placed explosive, or a simple software update can bring a nation to its knees. This brings us to the cyber-physical paradox. As we connect our dams, power plants, and hospitals to the web, we expose them to remote execution. The target is no longer the soldier on the front line, it is the patient on life support. Hackers can open floodgates to drown downstream villages or shut off water pumps to cause drought. The nightmare scenario is the cascading blackout. One grid failure triggers another, rolling across the continent. Smart cities turn against their inhabitants. Traffic systems gridlock evacuation routes. The Internet of Things becomes the Internet of Threats. Your own home becomes a hostile environment. Beyond the kinetic, there is economic strangulation. Choke points in the supply chain are squeezed to force political concessions. Just-in-time delivery means we are only 3 days away from hunger if the trucks stop moving. We built a system optimized for efficiency, not resilience. We sacrificed safety for speed. And in the transition to green energy, we rely on rare earth minerals controlled by a single monopoly. We are trading dependence on petrostates for dependence on electrostates. The master has changed, but the leash remains. The risk is systemic collapse. When infrastructure fails, social order dissolves within hours. This is the calculated gamble of modern hybrid warfare, to make life so unbearable that the population demands surrender. We are living inside the machine they built, and now they are ready to turn it on. The era of open globalization is over. The board is set. Connection was our greatest hope. Now it is our ultimate vulnerability. We look at the end game, we are entering the age of the great decoupling. The single unified internet is fracturing into distinct, competing digital ecosystems. This is the Splinternet, a digital iron curtain where data, commerce, and truth are contained within geopolitical fortresses. In this future, neutrality is a liability. Every pipe, every cable, and every port must pick a side. The infrastructure of tomorrow will not be run by human hands. It will be autonomous, governed by artificial intelligence optimized for efficiency and defense. Dark factories will churn out dual-use technology. Consumer goods by day, munitions by night, switched instantly by a line of code. But the ultimate weapon is computational. The race for quantum supremacy is not just about speed. It is about breaking the encryption of the enemy's entire infrastructure. When quantum arrives, every secret, every bank account, and every power grid password secured by traditional math becomes instantly visible. The battlefield expands vertically. Low Earth orbit is now the world's most critical supply line. He who controls the satellites controls the ground. Blind the satellites, and modern armies revert to the pre-digital age in seconds. Precision missiles become dumb rocks. To build this digital fortress requires physical Earth. The wars of the future will be fought over the lithium, cobalt, and copper needed to power the machine. We are seeing a new form of colonialism, not through occupation but through debt traps and infrastructure dependency. The road you walk on belongs to a foreign power. For the citizen, infrastructure becomes a panopticon. Smart cities promise convenience, but they deliver total surveillance. Your movement is data. Your data is a target. And when conflict starts, it won't be announced with a declaration of war. It will begin when the traffic lights turn green in all directions and the floodgates open. The line between military and civilian targets has been erased. In an infrastructure war, the population is the hostage. Victory is no longer defined by capturing territory. It is defined by system paralysis. Breaking the enemy's will by breaking their way of life. We built these systems to connect us, to make us stronger. But in doing so, we exposed our jugular to the world. The next century will be defined by who controls the pipes, the cables, and the code. Infrastructure is not just the board we play on, it is the player, it is the weapon, and it is the prize. The soldier of the future may never hold a gun. They will hold the keys to the water supply, the banking system, and the air traffic control tower. We are living in a glass house, and we have handed stones to our neighbors. The era of connectivity was a dream. Now we must wake up to the reality of the machine we have built before someone decides to turn it off. This is the new map of the world, not drawn by borders but by the physical lines of control. Infrastructure is the new weapon of war, and the war has already begun. For decades, we believed that connecting the world would make conflict impossible. But the very ties that bind us have become the choke points that can strangle us. Energy is no longer just a commodity to be traded, it is a lever to be pulled. The next siege will not require armies to surround a city. It only requires a switch to be flipped. We are living inside the machine they built, and the architects of this system are now ready to weaponize it. The era of open globalization is over. The era of strategic denial has begun. We must accept a terrifying new reality. The most dangerous weapon in the world isn't a missile in a silo. It is the infrastructure you use every single day. Infrastructure is the new battlefield, and the war has already begun.